Big news out of Anthropic. They have confidentially filed their IPO prospectus with the SEC. This basically preps one of the biggest IPOs that we will see on Wall Street, definitely this year, although SpaceX will give them a run for their money, but in a long time, perhaps one of the biggest ever. We don't know exactly what's going on here. A couple different things are happening with Anthropic. We got the IPO. We also have Opus 4.8, which just dropped, which I have been using heavily. I have lots of thoughts on that. I want to kick this over to you, Connor, and say, like, what's the most exciting thing for you here? We want to kick it off with the IPO or with 4.8?
I kind of want to talk about the IPO for a second here because 4.8 is interesting. I have a lot of thoughts on 4.8 as well. On Anthropic, though, here's the funny thing, right? So so Anthropic announces, they're filing for the IPO, everything like that, and we all knew that this was coming. But it's also interesting because the news leading up to this has really heavily favored Anthropic. I don't know if you'd agree with that, Jaden, but it's like all the vibes. Here's the weird thing about IPOs, especially in this space. I don't know if we're in unprecedented territory, but we are certainly in territory where you just don't see absolute colossal heavyweights all going at this, like sort of like one right after another. Maybe maybe when like Uber and Lyft were sort of seeing who could IPO first, things like that. But the thing is, it really has pretty huge implications. And Wall Street Journal was talking about this and talking about the implications. It's also interesting, Jaden, just visually, when you sort of see like the front page of the Wall Street Journal, like even just as of sort of like a few minutes ago, not to sort of like, timestamp us here or anything like that, but it's like Anthropic files for IPO. And then a few days ago, it was something like Anthropic has its first, profitable quarter, which I know it's, was it really profitable? Was it not? But certainly, if they're even in that realm of that discussion, that's something. And then right under it, Jaden, as you sort of sharing it right now, read that headline just under the OpenAI one.
OpenAI sued by Florida's Attorney General over AI harm.
Jaden, this is the Wall Street guys. If you know how IPOs just generally work, just generally speaking, there is a ton of vibe to it. Right. Yeah. There's a ton of just like feel to it. Like we can say all we want. Here's the numbers here. But in AI, that goes out the window. When you see how, I don't know if you just saw, I saw an article and I don't know where this was, but it's like, is Anthropic going to buy McKinsey? Right. I mean, like that's what we're talking about. This is like literally an AI. It's not a thing necessarily. I mean, look, we obviously know it is, but even the talk of like, well, can they buy McKinsey? How insane these conversations are. So much of this is vibes, and then Wall Street Journal has also been talking a ton about like who will kind of quote unquote win this race. And when they say race, they mean that very literally. Who is going to IPO first, OpenAI or Anthropic? Because historically, the one that goes first, there's only a finite amount of capital in the world to invest in this stuff, and historically the one that kind of comes out first is great. And I think Anthropic has a tremendous opportunity here if they can go first, because the problem with OpenAI is that OpenAI vibes are all over the place. Anthropic is on a hockey stick going up into the sky, and OpenAI, as big as it is and everything else, there's just, the zeitgeist sort of like right now is like, well, is it catching up? Is it in third place? Like what's going on? Like, how are they doing this? Like Sam Altman isn't running a good company, et cetera, et cetera. So I would say that in this very particular case, I'm going to be so curious to sort of see who, because Anthropic could file today, but OpenAI could file tomorrow. But so much of it is who goes first, because guys, we could sort of like dig into the numbers all we want. I just don't have any interest in doing it, because I think that so much is going to be the feel of like, who do people think is going to grow? Because last thing I'll say on this, Jaden, and then I sort of like, I want your take on this. The last thing I'll say on this is just, in business, what you learn sort of like in business school, all this kind of stuff in 101, you're essentially learning that, the stock price, things like that it's growth priced into it. What a company is doing right now has very little to do with, it has a lot to do with the stock price, but so much of that is growth and projected growth. And if we see Anthropic on this hockey stick going up to the sky, and if we see OpenAI saying like, oh, well, maybe they're leveling out and they have so much debt and all that kind of stuff, Anthropic going first, I think could be absolutely huge.
Okay. 100%. What's interesting to me is I don't even think this is a race between OpenAI and Anthropic at this point. You have a little bit of the OpenAI infighting from the CFO who said, hey, look, maybe we're not ready to IPO this year. Maybe we should wait till next year, yada, yada. So we kind of have that on the back burner. I think that's in a lot of people's minds. Like you mentioned, a lot of this is about vibes and how people actually feel about this. I don't think it's Anthropic versus OpenAI. I think it's Anthropic versus SpaceX. Both of these companies are pitted against each other, but also collaborating in a weird way. Both of them are going to have absolutely colossal IPOs. SpaceX was the quote unquote biggest privately held company until Anthropic came around and has been really trying to tear things up. And SpaceX technically still does have a higher valuation. I think they're looking at 1.25 trillion, whereas Anthropic is at their last round was like 950 billion. So slightly bigger company. I mean, they're shooting rockets into space, and they tried to do this whole AI company, which doesn't seem like Grok is, taken off in the same way that OpenAI or the others have if you look at the usage metrics, but it does have a pretty big base. A lot of people are using it. There's a lot of potential. It has a lot of distribution because they purchased X and they rolled XAI and they rolled it all in. And then they have, of course, SpaceX, which was, oh, look, we got all these satellite contracts, and also has Starlink, which is kind of worldwide internet. Like, it's just this massive conglomerate of all these really cool interconnecting technologies. And then it gets to the point where they're like, oh, and by the way, we also rent our data centers we use to train our AI model to Anthropic for $1.5 billion a month. Okay, so it's making a lot of money, very diversified. SpaceX is an interesting company in a lot of good places. And they're like, look, we're going to ship these things into space. And that's why SpaceX needs to be, an AI collaboration company, and they're going to IPO. What I will say is this is not Elon's first rodeo for the public markets, right? So I think if you had to pit Dario against Elon on this, Elon is going to win on the timing. He's smarter at that. And I'm not saying Elon's better at everything in the world, although, I mean, he's quite successful at what he does.
Pretty well.
If we just look at the stock market, though, Elon knows how to play the stock market game. Very successful with Tesla. If you invested, I think like $2,500 in Tesla when IPO to be worth $1 million today, the stock is split 15 times. He knows the value of hype. He knows how to, get the message out about a big vision. So I think SpaceX is going to do very well. Now, what is going on in regards to that? Well, apparently SpaceX actually already put out has already done all of their filings to go public. And they did it, I think, like a week before Anthropic or a couple of weeks before. Actually, I believe April 1st, they disclosed their public prospectus, or they disclosed it on May 20th, but they submitted it on April 1st. Anyways, it feels like they're a little bit ahead, and Anthropic's trying to catch up. OpenAI, I don't know when they'll land. I know they're working on it, but if I was making a bet, it's going to be SpaceX, Anthropic, OpenAI in that order. And SpaceX is going to suck up a lot of the money, but there's so many people just itching to get into Anthropic. So I would say people hold money to the side. What's left over for OpenAI? That's a big question I think people should be asking.
But I don't know. Also, can we just pause for 1 second, Jaden? So, guys, just kind of behind the scenes, Jaden and I, before we start talking, before we kind of like turn on the microphones, Jaden and I just like catch up about life and everything else. And so, just Jaden, a moment of that for a second. How could Elon Musk is just think about the things you named: SpaceX, Starlink, Tesla. This guy, I don't care what everybody thinks of him. This guy is the Da Vinci of our time. It's just every once in a while it hits me hard. Okay, listen, I actually like that framing of sort of like what's it going to do against SpaceX. I do think that OpenAI is in a precarious position. In fact, I can't remember if it was in the Times of the Journal today, but just they're just now out and out saying like, hey, Anthropic is the better run company. But also, in fairness, Sam Altman has been really scrutinized like it's like a man running for president, to be totally honest.
Really, 100%. Yeah.
And what does that do? I mean, like, again, sort of like, Anthropic has their long-term benefit trust, which is sort of like a little bit of a sketchy sort of board type structure. And anyway, I don't want to kind of go down that rabbit hole. I'd rather sort of like bend our time here into 4.8 because I've been using it. I haven't sort of like found the other things that people have been finding. Jaden, when it first came out, it sort of just popped up, and I went on X, and it was like 3 minutes earlier, 4.8 came out. I was like, wow, that was fast. But also, 4.7 had gotten kind of mixed reviews. And then people like Dan Shipper and others are like, oh my gosh, this should have been called like 5. It's that good. And other people are like, yeah, it's pretty good. But universally, it feels like people kind of like it. Everything that I was reading about it, which I hadn't really tested code and all that kind of stuff on it, but it's like, hey, for vibe coding, it's great. The thing that people were talking about, and I have not experienced this yet, I'll be honest, even though I've been sort of like really testing it out, is what I'm hearing from people is it pushes back more readily. So that, to me, if it just does that, that is worth its weight in gold. It is the thing we have been trying to solve forever with AI. Can it be a little less sycophantic? Can it sort of say, I don't know? For 3.5 years, we've been fighting that problem. It says it's supposed to sound a little more human, et cetera. But you said you've been using it. What have you been finding?
Okay, well, the thing that I like that happened with it, and I'm trying to find like exactly where they released this, but the dynamic workflows is what my
Hmm.
CTO at AI Box is the most excited about, and he's telling me about. And I mean, in the most simple terms, essentially what you can do with Claude Code now, which caveat, more expensive, Anthropic makes more money, so that's an interesting part of it. Is if you have the API, you can do dynamic workflows, so you can tell it to do a task, and it can spin up 100 agents or a bunch of sub agents to go get that task done faster for you. When is this useful? Oh, and so by the way, yes, it's faster, but also you're spinning up 100 agents. It's going to cost,
Right,
theoretically
way more.
100 times the tokens, right? When is this useful for you though? There's a lot of cases when this is incredibly useful. I'll just name one that I wish I had it like a month ago. I wrote I'm creating a Bible study app, and I have to write a chapter for every single, chapter for every single chapter in the Bible. There's like 1,300 of them. So I have it going and it runs all day long, writing them slowly, right?
It's
And
amazing.
honestly, it's taken like a week to do it and then re-review it and add stuff, whatever. Okay, it's just taking freaking forever. If I could just say, hey, spin up 1,300 sub agents and do them all in 10 seconds, yes, I will pay 1,300 times the token cost. I would do that. I don't want to sit there all day just, okay, continue, continue, continue. So I think there's so many different projects like that. With the dynamic workflows, though, they specifically have cited some really cool use cases where people have like ported entire languages or entire libraries over to new languages. Really popular. I think, if I'm remembering, like Pork got moved over to Rust. I could be getting that wrong for the developers out there. You might get mad at me, but anyways, there's big migrations that happen with entire code bases, and so I think you just need a lot of manpower, a lot of firepower to do it, and the dynamic workflows are doing it. So I'm excited about that. That rolled out at the same time as 4.8.
Yeah, it's one of these things where more and more I think we're slipping into the world where people are starting to experiment. But guys, listen, if you are out there and you have not started to vibe code and you haven't done anything like that, let me just sort of say one thing. I don't vibe code a ton, but every once in a while it's hyper useful. So don't feel like you're behind. Again, get to work with a lot of big companies that everybody feels like they're behind. The best thing you can do in those situations is try to articulate a problem. Like, even if it feels like AI can't possibly help, just go into Claude or whatever tool you want and just sort of say like, hey, what would it look like to do this? It literally does not matter. Like, pick a thing today. And I'm not sort of like out there being like, just find something, but it's articulation of problems, which tend to be the best for vibe coding. This is why I think Jaden tends to do this really well. Speaking of AI Box, by the way, guys, if you haven't tried AI Box, you have to get in on this. There are you can sort of like sign up for this, even starting like less than $10. It's taken off like crazy, which I'm thrilled about. But the more that we see these new models come out, and the more that we see like, well, what's 5.5 ChatGPT, feel like compared to Gemini, I feel like compared to Claude. For me, this is my favorite use case of AI Box. They also have workflows, everything like that, but it's just a matter of testing these things against each other. It's huge. Go test that out. Otherwise, guys, don't forget, leave us a rating and review if you are willing. We'd be so grateful. And otherwise, we will see you on the next